Welcome to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. This is Chris Miller. I invite you to join me as I interview artists from a variety of disciplines. We'll share powerful stories and lessons learned while making their art. Good day. You're listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. This is Chris Miller. Kind of going off cuff today, kind of trying a different thing. So this morning I had an interview scheduled and the person canceled last minute. And being in a flurry, I felt like I needed to get an interview out. As you know, I love to have something out every week. I called my friend Wilene and was venting to her about how it wasn't working out. This interview didn't happen. And what do? I normally do this. I normally do that. And suddenly, Wilene and I recalled this wonderful conversation that we had just earlier this week. And it was such a good conversation. I thought, I want to talk about that. And Wilene's actually on her own. She brought it up and she said the same thing to me. She said, you know what? Why don't you talk about this? And she said, I'll even log in with you. So the funny thing is, this is a story. This is a story of listening to divine intuition and inspiration. So I actually have Wilene here with me today, and I'm going to call her a returning guest, a oftentimes here guest. So good morning, Wilene. How are you?
Hi, Chris. I'm good.
Well, I was just telling the listeners how, I called you up and I expected something to happen and it didn't happen. And you know me, I'm a do it kind of guy, and I'm always like pushing to force something through.
Yeah.
And
Make it happen.
Make it happen. Well, sometimes we have to accept that it's not happening. And I think that's what this conversation is about. I've shared something. I brought something to show the listeners. I've been working on this painting for a while.
Wow.
And it's not working for me. And I keep struggling with it. And so what I do when a painting doesn't work is I turn it to the wall. I turn it back to the wall and I leave it in my studio and I wait a while and then I turn it back. What I have found is oftentimes I'll come back and I see a solution, but other times I don't. And so what we were talking about earlier this week is I can sit here and keep trying to make this color combination work or this composition work, or right. Or what? I could just start all over, right? Or let it go. Let it go. Mm-hmm. So you told this wonderful story about what that's like when you decide that some situation isn't actually serving you. It's okay. It's okay.
Right. Sure. So I was telling you, I was working on a new book called If a Bee Were Like Me. And so this idea of if a bee were like me, it would do the stages of blame. We blame ourselves. We blame others. We blame our environment. Oh, I'm stuck here because I grew up and my mother, and how long are we going to do that? It's like at some point you got to take radical responsibility for yourself as an adult. You're not 14 anymore. I'm going to say this. I was talking to a therapist and I said one time, I said, but this, I'm still connected to this. And she said, Wilene, you're 53 years old and you know stuff. You know way more stuff than you did when you were 14. So, but we hold on to that, right? We do the blaming of ourselves. So this bee goes through the process of it finds a flower, it has no pollen. It says, you stupid bee. I can't believe, you picked another flower without pollen. And then it goes to the next flower and it doesn't have pollen. It sits on the side of the flower going, I can't believe you, flower. You have no pollen. What's wrong with you, flower? You never give me what I need. And then it goes on. And then it's like the next flower has no pollen. Well, it must be global warming. It must be the environment. There must be a major problem here. And then, but if a bee were like me, if I were like the bee, right? If I were like the bee, I would go happily from flower to flower, finding what I needed, taking radical responsibility for, I want pollen. This flower doesn't have it. It's okay, flower. It's okay, me, right? I'm just going to go get what I need from the environment that has it. And, I walked out of my bedroom the other morning and I thought, gosh, after this long, I confessed my age already. After this long, I think, we grow up in a certain environment, we're trained to do certain things, we're in this thing, and now it's like we're stuck, we can't get out of it because we're accommodating our environment. So then we grow up and we continue to accommodate instead of going, wait a second, I can actually leave this job.
Mm.
Wait, I can actually leave this relationship that's not working. Hold on a second. You mean I can go be happy? Like the bee who just no pollen goes to the next flower for pollen. Has no attachment to all those things we attach. So it's a very fun conversation.
Well, it is because, my tendency, like when I called you this morning, is to resist it, to sit there and go, oh, what I had in mind for today is not happening. And then just hold on to it. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And then all day long, what didn't happen this morning? I didn't have my interview. But if we just say, oh, okay, what's next? Right.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
bee, we just fly to the next flower. That's that. And my husband tells me this wonderful story because I have a tendency, I admit this, listeners, I have a tendency to hold on to something and resist letting go. And he'll say, hey, Chris, that's just not on your path.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And he's like, that's just not on your path. Let it go. Or that person is not on your path. Or that job's not on your path. It's not serving you. And I'm like, but I'll make, I was telling you the other day, I'll make this work. If I work hard enough, they'll see who I am. Or if the boss is if I just do things more perfect or better or faster, I will be appreciated. But sometimes you're in an environment or a relationship where you're not appreciated. And it has nothing, this is what I'd love the listeners to hear today. It has nothing to do with you, right?
Right.
It just is.
Yeah. It's, it reminds me of a process we did in so it's called the door wall, right? You can go, if it's a wall, you're not going to get through it. It doesn't matter how nice you are to it, how loving you are to it, how mean you are to it, how aggressive you are with it. It's not going to open. It's a wall. You got to go to the door, right? And I love that example. So you can take coffee to the wall. It's not going to open. It's a wall. And when do we realize and how quickly we realize what's a wall for us so that we can get to the door and make a new decision? But it is just like that bee. It's just make a new decision. And quickly, right? Like you did today. You got that it's not happening. So we talked and it was like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this.
Just like that. Yeah.
Right. And so and that's what's so wonderful when you're open and you don't resist things. Suddenly spirit, God, all that is steps in and tells you what to do.
Yeah.
If I was busy resenting and just kept going back, we've all had that experience, right? We're talking to a friend and they're so upset about something, they can't see the solution and it's right there.
Mm-hmm.
But they keep going over and over, but this happened and this happened and this happened, but the solution's right here.
I had a conversation once with a girl who said, all this big story about who her dad was, and it was Christmas, and he had asked her to come and see him. It was a bit of a drive, but she's like, I'm not going because when I was a kid, and he did this, and he did that, and he was this, and I just said, just wait a second. So if we just let go of the story, so let's just say your dad was the best dad in the whole wide world, would you go? She goes, no, probably not because it's too far to drive. And I thought, so here's a critical point right here is that we do that because of our insecurity to say no to someone, to take radical responsibility for ourselves and say, that's not somewhere I want to go. And to take the hit when somebody might be upset with us by saying, no, it's too far. It's just, I feel like it's too far of a drive for me. I love you and I'm not going to do that. But instead, all the blaming, all the story, all the upset.
Wilene, you're reminding me exactly what we talked about earlier this week. It's coming back to me now is that I have a tendency to do that myself is I think if I realize when I fight for something like that, when I start defending that I'm not having faith in myself, I'll sit there and go, but she does this. And I find myself before I make a big decision, unfortunately, I'll go through weeks of this, and it's because she does this or that and da 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 da. And the truth of the situation is I have to have confidence and feel my feeling, right? And just
Yeah.
say, I don't want to be there.
I don't
Right?
like
Like you
it.
just said, I can't go on that ride. It's too long. It's not good today. It's not
Yeah.
good for me. And
Yeah. I
but
have to
if
pack up 3 dogs and 2 kids, and I'm not going to do that. Which is,
and that's
you know,
okay. It's
yeah.
okay.
Well, right. But getting to that, it is okay. It is okay that instead of having to blanket it with a story and blame somebody else, or blanket it with our story and blame ourselves, or blame our environment, right? We
Mm,
get to just make a choice. And I understand that's going to take some practice, right? There's some practicing that goes, okay, I'm telling a big story. I always say, if you're making a decision because something, like, well, I yelled at you because, yeah, well, okay. so so here's the problem there, because if you're doing something because someone else did something, or you're making a decision because someone else did something, then basically you've given your power away to a situation. You're no longer in control of you. You're deciding something based on somebody else, which means that's a completely giving your power up. You're not making a decision based on how you feel, but now you're based on how somebody else did something. But again, it gets you off the hook, but it makes you the victim
right.
to the
Right.
situation.
So there's so many different ways of looking at this simple, what we think is a simple thing is the blaming others and not letting go of it, blaming yourself instead of just saying, well, this
It's
is how I
all
feel.
victim. That's
And
all
also
victim.
and insecurity too, where I'm
Mhm.
not justified to feel this way. I find that when that I do that a lot, I feel like, oh, I don't have a right to say no to this. You have a right to say no. Listeners,
Yes, you
you
do.
have a right to say no. And so why I pulled Wilene in for this chat this morning is as you go through the week, I'm asking the listeners to sit down after this call and take a few minutes and think about what you're doing. What in your life are you doing? What piece of art are you trying to force through? Or what project or what relationship or what job that just is on the wrong path? And if you go, like to the next flower, I'm using mixing metaphors and walk through the door of that flower, but that all these different metaphors basically say there is a right path that you can follow.
Mhm. Yeah, so then we ask, why am I not motivated to do this job? And then you go, well, because da 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 da. And it's like, wait, so if you took radical responsibility in that moment and took your power back, and you said, because I don't like it. So I just don't like it. I don't like the work. I personally don't want to drive this far. Like all the reasons for you, not blaming you, but really like what it is that you don't enjoy about a situation or a relationship. They yell at me all the time. I really don't feel uplifted. All the little things that you could say. I want to be somewhere, and then you go in, because that's condition, right? So the last time we talked about, then you go into what it is you want. I want a relationship that gives me everything that I desire, from an aspect of affection and camaraderie and encouragement. And you get to write that script. Well, you do with your job too, and anything. It goes back to that. The bee goes to the flower. That's a condition, no pollen. So am I going to blame the flower? Am I going to blame, am I going to just focus on condition and be in that story? Or am I going to do what I want? And that's leave there, go find something else, right? So it goes
Right.
back to that too. Kind of all folds together.
Well, and there's even one more thing that you reminded me of when you said that is you don't have to make the situation wrong. It's just wrong for you.
Yeah,
You don't have to make the person wrong. They're
I
just
love it.
wrong for you.
Yeah.
And or that painting is wrong for you. Maybe it's time to change the colors or and I encourage everybody listening to this, it's okay to even take a project and throw it away. This isn't working for me. It's not bringing me joy. I'm going to put this canvas in the trash. I mean, I always encourage, because I'm so frugal, to paint over it. But you know what? Sometimes you might just need to get it out, right?
Yeah.
You get it out of your
And how
view.
cool, you get to make that decision. And that's the thing what you were saying earlier. You're worthy of making the decisions that uplift and encourage you. And here's the thing. Somebody else may really want that job that you're in that you hate. And if you get out of the way, they can have it and they would love it, and you can go do what you want to do. I mean, it opens up so much space for everything. And plus, how could you ever be your best at something you didn't want to be doing? Whether it's the whole because part, you just don't like it, and that's okay. It's the absolutely giving yourself permission to say, you know what I really like to do? I really like to paint bold colors, and I know everybody says they don't like them, and I don't care because it's what I want to do,
Right.
right? And I can love them and that and all that. But I don't have to take that on either. And that would be the other part, if the flower could talk back and say, well, you should sit here and try to make this, I mean, that's a part of it too. Other people talking to us about, what we should and shouldn't do. There's none of that. If you're not being fully enriched and alive, if you don't feel the aliveness of your day, take a look at it. Because it's not your hormones, and not everything else you blame, right?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
that you're doing things that take away your aliveness.
Mm, I love it. I love it.
Identify those things and
And let them
get
go.
rid of them.
And try. So your assignment this week, listeners, is to identify something in your life and decide to let it go. Just let it go. It's not on your path. There's another flower right down the lane. There's another door to go through, but you don't have to fight.
Right.
So so
It reminds me of the Gilmore Girls. And that Maria Kondo book where she talks about if you pick up something in your house that doesn't bring you joy,
oh
get rid
yes.
of it.
Yes, yes.
Unfortunately, in this scene, they had just lost their father, and the wife had lost a husband of 48 years, and she was throwing everything out. And the daughter says to her mom, look, nothing's going to bring you joy right now because, you just lost your partner. Right. But essentially, it's what we do if we're doing something that doesn't bring us joy, if we own things that don't bring us joy, if we're in relationships that don't bring us joy. It's not about blaming them. It's that they just don't have the pollen. They
Yes.
just don't have the pollen for you. And so just go on, because if you're living 100% and I'm living 100% what we love doing, then we're creating a world that works for everyone, because then we're able to be full expressions, and then that trickles out like that stone in the water, that ripples out. But if we're frustrated and down, and then I'm talking to you about my frustration, and then you're talking about your frustration, what are we creating? More of the same.
Exactly. So on that note, because I don't want this to go too long, it's supposed to be just a short snap for you all listeners. But on that note, I remind you that I am, and this recording is on my YouTube channel at the Spiritual Artist Podcast. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you know when we release new videos. I have a woman next week. I'm really excited. She is from the UK. Her name is Irene Purcell. She is an artist and a coach, and I've already had a little pre-talk with her just this morning. She's great. She's not the interview that canceled. She's going to be fantastic. So check us out next week to listen to Irene. She's got a lot to share, and she's going to talk about what she says is where everything is connected. Everything is connected.
And like and subscribe to.
Yes, like and subscribe to at the Spiritual Artist Podcast on YouTube.
Yes.
So, Wilene, thanks for helping me fill the spot.
Yeah, thanks. I always love our conversations. They're just super fun.
It is fun. Thanks again.
All
Talk to
right.
you soon.
Bye.
Bye.